Story 1. Back when I was 10, there was a competition for school children to write a treatment for an episode of Doctor Who, with the best one being developed into a full episode in the next series, and the winner receiving a writing credit. I was a huge fan of Doctor Who at the time, and the competition was actually run through schools, so my teacher made the entire class do it, but I was very excited. I began writing a story about the Doctor landing on a planet full of defective Cybermen, whose programming had gone awry and had been left on this asylum planet to rot. The Doctor lands there in response to a mysterious distress call from a woman and attempts to find and save her while avoiding the dangerous dysfunctional Cybermen and the looming threat of planetary destruction at the hands of the normal Cybermen. I finished my short treatment and gave it to my teacher to submit. Unfortunately, it turned out the competition was very strict about the formatting of submissions, and mine was returned because I had used the wrong formatting in some way. Seemed like a weird reason. I was a bit disappointed, and that was the end of that. But then, a year or two later, there was an episode of Doctor Who called Asylum of the Daleks, which seemed incredibly similar to my story except with Daleks. So incredibly, eerily similar, in fact, that to this day I am absolutely convinced that Stephen Moffat saw my script and came up with a formatting excuse so that he could remove me from the competition, steal my story, change the bad guys, and claim it as his own. I have zero evidence. I don't even still have the treatment I wrote or any letter from the British Broadcasting Corporation about my submission, and yet I know in my bones that Stephen Moffat stole his script from 10-year-old me. Story 2. Back when I was 18, I got my first tattoo, the Squaresoft logo on my upper arm. It was 2001, and I was also on my own in a new state. I was, and still am, a huge RPG fan, and it's the height of my geekdom. I sent in a picture of me and my tattoo with a short letter about me and my favorite games to official PlayStation magazine. They published my letter and photo along with the caption, "We don't know whether to be impressed or frightened." The very next month, they started a Tattoo of the Month section, and I am absolutely sure I was either the start of that or the story that proved the concept, the test. Unless someone from that team's time can tell me I'm not, I'll always believe I was the start of that. Edit. Here is a current picture of the tattoo. I looked for several hours to try and find the original that I sent in. I thought I had it saved, but I guess it's lost forever. Sorry, everyone. Story 3. My ex-boss used COVID-19 as an excuse to make me redundant because I was the only member of his team to be hired by someone else and not him. Forget that guy forever. Story 4. That a lot more famous actors than we realize are secretly the children of other famous actors from the previous generation. I call it the Hollywood bastard theory. Story 5. If I am stuck in traffic and switch lanes because the other lane looks like it will move faster, the lane I just switched from will automatically go faster. Story 6. My cat is in a constant superposition of having recently eaten and being starved to death. At least that is how she acts. Also, any of my feelings about myself cannot contradict or disprove those no matter how hard you try. Story 7. Not that it is something I believe to be true, but something that I often think about is the butterfly effect. Like little things I do during the day could affect the total outcome of my day. Story 8. I watched Flight 93 go down. I would never share that in real life because it is grim and no one would believe you, as the geography of the reports is off. I saw it clear as day from Kent State's main campus in Ohio. I didn't know what I was seeing, other than I remember thinking, that plane is way too low. We had an aviation college, so planes were common and too big, and it's jerking around like how a toddler drives a Power Wheels truck. Continued on to class. You don't want to be late even at a liberal college. Story 9. 1 in every 3 or 4 people is not capable of critical thinking. And I am not making some kind of point about politics or anything. I mean, those people are literally incapable of taking in information and synthesizing it with other information and coming to their own conclusions. They are basically robots programmed by whatever source is most convincing to them. Story 10. Gut bacterial imbalance can change a person fundamentally, physically, mentally, and emotionally. One day they are going to cure some impossibly vexing diseases and conditions when they figure out that it is all connected to what lives in your gut. Story 11. I'm really, really lucky. But like in a subtle way, if there's a 95% chance I'll get hurt doing something stupid, I'll come out unscathed. Sometimes I think there's a guardian angel watching over me, making sure I don't kill myself by being an idiot. Story 12. I'm quietly convinced I made a best-selling mystery novelist change the way he writes because I criticized him on Reddit. The novelist in question is Chris Carter. The books are the Robert Hunter series. Yes, the guy who has built a career on looking for serial killers is named Hunter. He works for the Los Angeles Police Department's ultraviolent crime unit. It's not a series that's overburdened by subtlety, is what I'm saying. They are as schlocky a bunch of thrillers as you could ever hope to find, but for some reason I can't get enough of them, despite the fact that they're very much not great. They lean pretty heavy on ridiculous tropes, and I've never seen a more Mary Sue lead than I have in this series. But the biggest complaint I have with them is that the same line appears almost literally word for word in the first 9 books. I made a comment about it on Reddit on a thread about your favorite terrible authors, and I went back through all of the books published so far just to prove my point. The Crucifix Killer. The famous line doesn't actually appear in this book as far as I could find, but Hunter does drink scotch near constantly as the defining trait of his character. Across the room, a stylish glass bar looked totally out of place. It was the only piece of furniture Hunter had purchased brand new and from a trendy shop. It held several bottles of Hunter's biggest passion single malt Scotch whiskey. The bottles were arranged in a peculiar way that only he understood. And so it begins. The Executioner. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion. But unlike most people, he knew how to appreciate it instead of simply getting drunk on it. Note that in this one and the next Carter doesn't even use the Scottish spelling, whiskey, rather than whiskey. Despite the fact that this is literally Hunter's only character trait, the Night Stalker, Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey, but unlike most, he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Death Sculptor. Hunter sat at the bar and ordered a double dose of 12-year-old Glendronach with 2 cubes of ice. Single malt Scotch whiskey was his biggest passion, and though he had overdone it a few times, he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Hunter. Hunter's father had a passion for single malt Scotch whiskey, a passion that, frankly, Hunter had never understood. He found whiskey, any type of whiskey, way too overwhelming for his palate. I actually quite like this one. It's a prequel novella, so this one is a nice little meta throwback. It gets a pass from me. One by one, Hunter would never consider himself an expert, but he knew how to appreciate the flavor and robustness of single malts, instead of simply getting hammered on them, though sometimes getting hammered worked just fine. This is also the first appearance of the "but sometimes getting drunk works just fine, am I right?" addendum. It's nice to see Carter branching out a little, but after this, he never looks back. An Evil Mind. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion. Unlike so many, he knew how to appreciate its palate instead of just getting drunk on it. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. I Am Death. Back in the living room, wrapped in a white towel, Hunter switched on a floor lamp and dimmed its intensity to medium. That done, he approached his drinks cabinet, which was small but held an impressive collection of single malt Scotch whiskey, which was probably his biggest passion. Though he had overdone it a few times, Hunter sure knew how to appreciate the flavor and quality of a good single malt, instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Caller. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey. Back in his apartment, tucked in a corner of his living room, an old-fashioned drinks cabinet held a small but impressive collection of single malts that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. Hunter would never consider himself an expert on whiskey, but, unlike so many, he at least knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality, instead of simply getting drunk on it, though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. The Caller also gets double points for helpfully informing us that women just don't get the subtle nuances of Scotch. Hunter tried not to frown at her again, but he was sincerely intrigued. Women in general weren't very fond of Scotch whiskey, which wasn't at all surprising. Whiskey was undoubtedly an acquired taste, one that at first would certainly overpower anyone's palate and knock the air out of their lungs in the process. Hunter knew that only too well. The trick was to persist, to keep trying, to keep sipping it until one day it finally made sense. Women usually weren't that patient with drinks. They either liked it at first sip or they didn't. This, by the way, is how we know that the woman in question is trustworthy, because reasons, Gallery of the Dead. Back in his apartment, Hunter had a small but impressive collection of scotch that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. He would never consider himself an expert, but unlike so many of his friends, who also claimed to enjoy single malt Scotch whiskey, he knew how to appreciate the flavors and robustness of the malts, instead of simply getting drunk on them. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. That post was made in January of 2019. In April, his book Hunting Evil came out, and the line was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think much of it until his new book, Written in Blood, came out a few days ago and also didn't have the line in it. This comment is also one of the top answers if you search his name and the book series via Reddit. Exactly what you'd do if you were looking to see if people on the internet were talking about your books. I also can't find any evidence of anyone else pointing this out in a review or such like. So yeah. In short, 3 months after I made that comment, he broke the habit of a decade of writing and finally decided that after 9 stories that used this as a crutch for Hunter's personality, it was too much. I know you're reading this, Chris. I know. Story 13. That Andy Dufresne was guilty in the Shawshank Redemption. It is never actually proven that he did not kill his wife and her lover. We just have his word and a story made up by an inmate who wanted to be liked by Andy and his friends. Also, what are the chances that his wife and lover were murdered the same night that Andy was going to kill them himself before he changed his mind? Story 14. That alien life forms will be nothing like we have ever imagined. This comment has gotten kind of popular. Thanks for all your comments. This has made me realize how little we truly know about the universe. A lot of the comments here have made me start Googling new topics, and that has led me to a YouTube video that summarizes what I am trying to say much more eloquently and intelligently. Story 15. My sister ate the whole ice cream box without asking my parents. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but she didn't leave any ice cream. I don't know what happened to the box. Story 16. That 1 to 2 generations down the line, our use of technology will lead to extreme mental health issues. My brain feels deep-fried from time to time, and I hadn't seriously started using a smartphone before I was already an adult. Story 17. I am essentially a good, decent person. I may not act this out successfully. It's the fact that I keep trying to act it out relentlessly that makes it true. Story 18. That Drogon is kind of brainwashing Daenerys in A Song of Ice and Fire, A Game of Thrones. He keeps giving her dreams and convinced her to burn the masters at Astapor and take the Unsullied with fire and blood. The other dragons are freaking out during the scene, but he's perfectly calm. He was also staring her down the night before when she woke from her dream. The Valyrian Empire was built for the dragons. The dragons told the men what to do, empowered them with wisdom and magic, and built an empire of flame, lava, and obsidian. And the eggs begged the Targaryens to hatch them. It's why they had their dragon dreams. It's why so many Targaryens looked to be reborn as a dragon and were driven mad. Aerion Brightflame thought he was a dragon trapped inside a man and died drinking wildfire. Aerys the Mad King wanted to burn them all and be reborn as a dragon. Baelor the Blessed would pray over his dragon egg to make it hatch. They heard a dragon's voice reaching into their thoughts, and some mistook them for their own thoughts. Dany had a miscarriage but wakes to only think of her eggs and is found crawling toward them. All of this can be explained logically, but I know in my bones that there's more going on here. Story 19. I believe I am responsible for Alex Rodriguez turning around his horrible season in 2009. Yes, I know that many sports fans think they can influence a player or team, but I really did it, folks. Allow me to explain. Like many Yankees fans, I was frustrated with Alex Rodriguez. He was always a bit of a difficult personality, and he struggled in high-pressure situations. It seemed he would only get the big play when the Yankees were already assured of winning a game, but never when we really needed that hit. So, Alex Rodriguez started off the season abysmally. By the time the Yankees came to Atlanta, his average was at .213. You see, I live in Atlanta, so I bought tickets for the whole series. It's only once every 6 years that my boys visit Atlanta, so I get the series every time they do. Another thing is Yankees fans are really good at taking over stadiums, and the Braves have a fair-weather fan base. So we were able to chant and cheer and basically drown out the Braves fans. We even were able to do the Yankees roll call during games 2 and 3. I'm sure you guys think that's super disrespectful, but whatever, go Yankees. So we lose game 1 and Alex Rodriguez goes 0 for 4. He gets booed a few times because we were getting fed up with this. In game 2, Joba Chamberlain gives up a home run to Jeff Francoeur in the 5th and we're losing 1-0. Francisco Cervelli ties it in the 6th, and then Derek Jeter and Johnny Damon get on base. Alex Rodriguez is up and we need a clutch hit. But Alex Rodriguez never gets a clutch hit. People were already starting to boo him, so I made a decision. If I can get him to be cheered on the road, maybe it'll fire up a spark and get him out of this slump. So I start going crazy with, "Let's go, Alex Rodriguez." Picks up steam. The Yankee boos start to quiet, and Yankee fans around me pick up my chant. After all, we need a clutch hit, so why not? It spreads as Alex Rodriguez's at-bat continues. Within about a minute, Turner Field is booming with an Alex Rodriguez chant. I think it's the first one I've heard in months, and it's while they're playing on the road. Alex Rodriguez crushes a liner to deep center and drives in both runs. Hell yeah, I still don't like you, Alex Rodriguez, but good job. We end up winning 8-4. So in game 3, I decided I'm chanting Alex Rodriguez all game. It's my personal goal to get him out of this slump. So every at-bat, "Let's go, Alex Rodriguez." First inning, he hits a 2-run homer. We all erupt. In the second inning, the chant is louder, and he drives in Derek Jeter with a single. In the 4th inning, we're even louder and he reaches on an error. In the 5th inning, Alex Rodriguez walks. In the 7th inning, he drives in Derek Jeter and Johnny Damon with a single. And finally, he strikes out in the 8th. But all in all, Alex Rodriguez went 3 for 5 with 4 runs batted in. And he had Yankee fans support the entire game. Support that I hadn't seen in months. Alex Rodriguez went on to play the Mets and have solid outings. Steadily, his batting average went up from the .213 it was when he arrived in Atlanta to .286 by the end of the regular season. Then he absolutely crushed it during the postseason. So yeah, I contributed to that. I know players can get hyped by the fans, so I figured I'd show him some support because even though I didn't particularly like him, we needed his bat to perform. I've actually changed my mind on him since he's retired. As a commentator now, he's actually really likable, and he clearly knows his stuff. So, Alex Rodriguez, you're good people.